seconds. So it shows me that we're live, guys. So let me just have a quick boo and make sure it is what it is and it says what it says, because one never knows.
Exactly.
At least we've been talking this time.
Yeah, exactly. It tells me that it's live, but just refresh my
Oh, I don't have coronavirus.
just I guess I should press play when it tells me to press play. And this will be a good audio check too, right? Oh yeah, right on. I see, yes. Wonderful. One never knows.
You may get feedback without headsets on, Omar. Just a word of warning.
Yeah, exactly. Is there a feedback for you?
Not for me, but there may be for you. You know, you'll get that echo.
That sounds all right. I guess I should press play. Yeah, it sounds all right. There's no reverb.
Okay.
Yeah, right on. Yeah. All right, cool. We're happening. So I always like that. Share the stream, guys. Yeah, see? Can you hear yourself?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm just gonna mute this over here.
Sounds good.
Okay, Amy says it sounds good too, so that's cool. Right
Hi,
on.
Amy.
Hello, Amy.
Much to Amy. Give the video a like. It helps raise it in the old algorithm. And we'll just give it a minute or two here, guys, and let people file in. And let me go over here to Facebook, and I'll share around.
I just turned my Facebook off
Yeah, me too.
because it was making message noises all the time.
I'll just go here over to mine because I've already shared it, and I'll share it to a few places. Live in a couple of minutes, yeah.
And did you change the E to I?
Pardon me, George?
You spelled my surname wrong in the Facebook thing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, mea culpa, mea culpa, mea maxima culpa. And if you're not a Catholic, you will never understand that.
No, I try not to associate myself with things like that.
Yeah, they're very dangerous. Never trust a man in a frock.
No, especially when they come at you with the word of God, right? To me, that's always red flags. The minute that
The
happens,
word of a dyslexic dog. Yes.
Yeah, I'd rather speak to someone on a human-to-human, mind-to-mind level instead of like a brainwash program, right? That's just not my deal.
Right.
I'd rather talk to a person as a man. So it's been shared over here, and we'll get it going on over here. I did have a slide play for you guys, but that didn't pan out. So all right, so let's start the show here. What's up, guys?
Cool.
I got a comment here. Let me have a look at that.
See, Amy.
George and Clarence, right on.
Cool.
All right, so we'll start the show here. Hey guys, what's up? My name's Omar. I am the host of Watchers Talk, and like I said, the last time around, we're going to bring you quality over the quantity. So the quality here tonight is my buddy George Mitrovic from Australia, and he is the author of 33 books. I was going to play a slideshow for you guys, but unfortunately I wasn't able to do it. And maybe I'll share it on Facebook and show you guys. But anyhow, it's we can go from all kinds of different topics, from UFOs to Bigfoots to wormholes to hairy hominoids to sea creatures and lake monsters and archaeology and weird archaeology, and this guy doesn't write books, he writes atlases.
Yeah, I like atlases.
So just imagine that. There's people out there that like to write books, but my friend here, he likes to write atlases and dictionaries and such. So I'm always honored to have him on our show because we get to pick his mind. And the last few times I've been at a disadvantage because it was just George and I one-on-one. And so this time around, I thought I'd tag team George and brought my buddy Clarence in. And because I know Clarence just recently has been working on a theory about wormholes. So I thought that this would be a perfect time because George is an authority on this type of subject in the world. And the book that he's just written is like one of a kind. And it's like 900 pages. He had to shorten it a little bit. It was like 12, 14, 1,500 pages,
wow.
But I cut it down. You guys can get this book on Amazon. And also, if you just want to go to Google and punch in George Mitrovic, and you'll see just a list of his books come onto the screen. Now, I've had George on the show here a few times now, right? I don't know, George, how many times now? Like 4 or 5 times now you've been on Watchers Talk?
4 or 5, yeah.
Yeah, we tried to do
Hated
this.
every moment of it.
Yeah, we tried to do this a couple of months ago, but then we had audio issues and tech issues and things like that. So, we
this book tends to do that.
Yeah, and then now, fortunately enough, thanks to our buddy Clarence here, he discovered this StreamYard. So a plug-in for StreamYard here. Thanks very much, StreamYard, for developing such a user-friendly product. And for sure, I'll be subscribing to you guys in the future. So a little plug for StreamYard. You guys all know my buddy co-host Clarence Mitchell from Closer Encounters. He does all kinds of shows, and he's been my co-host on many occasions. So there's no need to really introduce him. And I just introduced George. So George, thanks for sparing your Sunday afternoon and coming on here on Watchers Talk and having ourselves a little talk around the table.
Hello, Omar. Hello, Clarence.
Hello, George.
Greetings from the bottom of the earth. If you believe in that theory, but it can't be flat. The cats don't throw everything over the edge. For those who don't know me, my name's George Mitrovic. If you wanted to use the ethnic pronunciation, it's Mitrovic, but most people can't spell it or pronounce it. So it was anglicised a long time ago. What do you want to ask me? I can write about almost anything. And you've got a few books behind me as well.
So what I'd like to know, what I wanted to talk about with you and what you want to talk about with us, as you were saying earlier, is about your new book that you just recently published, like just a few months ago, right? So tell us about that book, and let's please keep it on the layman's terms. Because
I only use layman's terms.
Yeah, you're gonna lose us on a lot of stuff here. So let's talk about your new book and educate us on wormholes and anomalies that are in space and possibly even around us.
Well, I don't write intellectual books. They bore me shitless. If I want to know the differences between fishhooks from one Pacific island to the other, I'll get somebody else to write them. I don't want to know them, but I'll point you to the Pacific Island. I'll point you to look. My book's a travel guide. So's my wormhole book. Here it is. Delicate little thing. 800 pages, I think. I really count them. What is it? Yeah, 804 pages. Reduced from 1,700 pages. And that wasn't my phone.
Nope, mine either.
Yeah, mine's off.
Yeah, that was mine. I'm trying to get onto the same page as everybody else. There you go. We're good. Okay, anyhow. So go on, George.
Okay, this little book that I published late last year, I reduced it to 1,743 pages because it couldn't be produced in paperback form, to 804 pages. It's a condensed version of a book that I started in 1973.
Wow.
Which I'm not sure. It might be before Omar was born. But I think I actually started it a long, long, long time before then. And it'll give you an understanding of how I got involved with Bigfoot and UFOs and bizarre archaeology and the entire multiverse of opportunities and mysteries that I write about. And I write about all of them. I don't leave a mystery unturned. I like to get in there. I like to find out what it is. I remember reading a little-known book called the Allende Letters when I was 8. It was on the Philadelphia experiment. I remember reading The Mountains of Thero by Leonard Cottrell when I was 5. Pretty heavy reading for a 5-year-old in a little country town in the 1950s Australia. I have a voracious appetite for knowledge and data. Brad Steiger, John Keel, Charles Fort.
Wow.
Why does my brain go blank every now and again? And a host of others. Colosimo, Charoux. Which subject do you want? Which book do we go to? What title do we head for? Anyway, reading these voluminous books, along with being a nerd at school, I kept thinking, because I tend to overthink things. I'm self-diagnosed Asperger's. I like patterns. I don't like chaos or randomness. But it helps my brain identify things that most people can't. Going through lots and lots of different books, I kept thinking, though these phenomena are different, there are themes. What are the themes? And I decided, let's have a simple little thing to do. I'll find out what they are. A bit like Einstein's total theory of the world which he never created. I thought I'll do it for this. Are there themes or are there not themes to the occurrence of phenomena? Visitations, UFOs, Bigfoot, Chupacabra, you name it. Everything. Sea monsters, lake monsters, comets falling from the sky, micrometeorites. Is there a pattern? I thought, okay, the only way we can do this is mathematically. First, the reason we do it mathematically is because mathematics is pure and simple. It's either wrong or it's right. You can't obfuscate
the language of the universe, George?
Yes, mathematics is what controls the universe. Everything works relative to everything else.
Right.
But are there patterns that are even more precise than the patterns of planets going around stars, of universes are traveling around multiverses? So what I did was I started collating data from my library of books, which was quite extensive by then. There were no computers then. I had slips of paper in old typesetters boxes. They used to put the little slip with the data on it into the typesetter's box, and they're all in alphabetical order. And then I kept collecting them until I found, hang on, there are 47 from this spot, but they're different phenomena. This spot's nothing. This spot, different phenomena. What the hell is going on here? There'd be a spot like a mountain. One side of the mountain, the hippies are seeing the Virgin Mary in a tree, or whatever their favourite bodhisattva was. Other side of the mountain, there's some hunters and they're out hunting, and they're seeing Bigfoot, or Wolfman, or Ape Man, or anything you want. And you go to the other side of the mountain nearby, and there are people seeing it's Orphon from Venus and the blonde-haired Venusians, or somebody else, or Greys, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the themes? The themes are not what's being seen. They are not part of the pattern. The themes are where and when. Because as we'll come to it, what is a totally different animal. A totally different animal. Years and years of graphing resulted in the only known graph left of it, because I had the shits one day and burnt all of them. And there were hundreds of them. This is North America
Oh,
from
boy.
1800 to 1970. Do you notice they're sine waves?
Yes. Hmm.
Sine waves are not random. They cannot be random. They are repetitive. They are mathematical. They are harmonics. And the universe is based on harmonics. Everything is based on harmonics and the speed of harmonics. Whether it be microharmonics in a microwave, the harmonics that hold atoms together, or the harmonics that control the multiverse. So I thought, I've got all these graphs. And this was 1994. So we'd had 20 years of research done, and lots and lots and lots and lots of now lost graphs. And there used to be a TV show on Australian television called Beyond 2000, in the dark future of after 2000, which is now the past. And a reporter there got me in touch with a physicist, a renowned maverick physicist. And I've been regarded as a maverick scientist. I don't mind. Bit of a plain conservative, acknowledged, tenure-seeking scientist that won't discover anything because I'm too afraid of losing my job. I'd rather be a maverick. I can write about anything I want then.
Yeah.
Can't get thrown out of anywhere. I won't lose any tenure. I don't have any. But anyway, Christopher Willett, in the dim, dark ages of computing, I think it was still just post Commodore 64 level, which is less than my watch, or less brain power than my watch. I said, Christopher, I believe there are patterns to this, and I showed him the graphs. And he said, there's only one way of checking it. So for 4 weeks, I fed information into this gigantic, clunky computer. You can imagine, it's 1994. And he did a reverse exponential projection. And that's all I'll describe it as, because I don't understand the maths. But what it did was, this database was all data from 1800 to 1977 at the time. The reason I started at 1800 is a lot of excuses for phenomena didn't exist then. You can't see a light in the sky and say it's a plane. There aren't any. Things like that. So he gave us a good test base. By doing an exponential projection, a reverse one, instead of one huge peak heading into our time, as reports increased and increased and increased, it flattened them out. So you end up with ripples.
Mm-hmm.
Funnily enough, the ripples started looking like that. They're in the book.
Oh, yeah.
That is a 515-year ripple.
560-year report?
515-year ripple.
515.
We worked out that based on that, there was a planet outside of Pluto, which we called Persephone. Persephone was discovered that year by Siding Springs Observatory using 100 AU, or astronomical unit error factor.
Mm-hmm.
An astronomical unit is the distance from the Earth to the Sun. This showed no error factor. 515 years. No movement left, no movement right.
Wow.
We thought, that's interesting. What else is there? We ended up with another cycle running in these cycles. That cycle is very similar to the periodicity of Uranus, the planet, not the orifice. But some people might think I'm speaking from my orifice. And then we found more. It gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And they're all in the book. Oh, we're not seeing too well there. It's too bright. Eventually, with all of these, we found there were the periodicities are very similar in all cases to the major planets. We isolated them down to Jupiter. We even explained why there was a wobble in Neptune's orbit relative to Uranus, which, okay, what's this to do with what I'm writing about? Well, It validated that all the data, and all my data was based on UFO sightings, extraterrestrial visitations, Bigfoot, lake monsters, sea monsters, earthquake lights, all of the above. They should not have formed a pattern at all.
Yeah, and you know what
They
this
should-
what this reminds me of, George, is I saw a documentary not that long ago where this guy was saying that he's discovered that there's a pattern in mass extinctions every 32 million years or 34 million years or something. He was saying where an asteroid would come down, strike the Earth, and it would start a new cycle essentially, and that's what he put the mass extinctions to. Yeah, that's yeah.
This
When
is my
God
history with
created-
mass extinctions. Well,
Zoom in on that. Yeah.
it's colour. What I did, oh, it's not colour. The colour one was too dear. But you have maps of meteor craters, some of them miles across, all dated in chronological order, all at the beginnings and ends of great climate disasters and global extinctions.
Now, in your opinion, where do you think these objects are coming from? Are they coming from the Kuiper Belt, or are they coming from the asteroid zone beyond past Mars there?
You've got three types. The nearby ones where apparently Maldek used to be, if you look at early Hopi mythology, between Mars and Jupiter. It apparently was destroyed 300 million years ago. Oddly enough, that ties in with Hopi legends, but we won't discuss that at the moment. Or it could be from the Kuiper Belt with multi-year periods. The Maldekian ones, or the asteroid belt ones, have got very short periods. And then you've got ones that are just traveling through the multiverse.
Like
And
the
the
ones that we
multiverse-
recently had?
What's that?
Like the one that we recently had?
Yes.
What do they call that one?
I can't remember.
Cigar-shaped one, Clarence?
What's that now? The one?
That asteroid that just flew past us through our
Oh,
solar
that one.
that we're
There's so
saying.
many of them, I forget about them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
We're
one
in
that,
an asteroid stream peak period at the moment.
yeah,
And I even wrote about it in
is.
this, like in that book. But
Why do
we
you
are in
suppose
a
that is,
period of
George?
asteroids. That's why we got to keep an eye out for them.
So why do you think this is the peak period of asteroids? What's essentially
Every
causing this?
10,000 years with minor 2,000-year periods.
Mhm.
And a lot of cases wiping out civilizations at the same time,
Yeah,
which I've written about lots and lots and lots of times. You know, I've got several books on the last great cataclysm of 12,000 years ago, 10 to 12,000 years ago. Don't mind me.
yeah. Just go here.
Here we go. The comets and meteors at the end of the last ice age. When a massive series of comets crashed down to Earth,
oh,
like that. The big circle is the Bermuda impact crater, 1,500 k's across. The Bermuda Islands are the central uplift. The central uplift, if you think of bottles of milk and dropping milk into them, and you do it in slow motion, you get a central uplift. In the case of meteorites, central uplift solidifies the
Mhm.
center of the crater.
We see that on Mars as well,
Yes,
on the moon. What do they call that?
central uplift. I got lots of maps in this one. I quite like them. I like maps. As you said, I like writing books on. Give you an idea. the number of meteoric attacks. That's over Russia. Those little yellow dots are craters. The big one is a Kazakhstan crater, same period. This is all 10,000 years ago. The end of the last ice age. The end of when sea levels suddenly rose 300 feet on average. That wiped out a lot of coastal civilizations, a lot of islands, a lot of ridges, a lot of places for other cultures to survive until then. That's a period when the major ice masses of North America were destroyed by cometary impacts. If you look at the right side of Hudson Bay, it's still perfectly half circular.
Yeah, that's. I was just going to mention. I was going to ask you whether Hudson's Bay is an impact zone.
Yes, very much so. It's in quite a few of my books.
Like it slid in like that, right? That little tip on the bottom, that's about like that. It looks like it slid in and smashed into it, and opened that big hole there. And oddly enough, George, Manitoba, the province which Hudson's Bay is connected to, is called the province of 10,000 lakes. So it almost seems like an asteroid hit it, shattered the land, and filled in all the pockets with water.
You notice the Bermuda crater. Those little yellow things. They're hard to see on this thing. It's it's here. And then you've got smaller impact craters heading up to Alaska to keep diminishing in size, which indicate that the main mass coming from the east crashed into the Atlantic, where Bermuda is now, and fragments of it continued as the Earth turned towards it. It's called a teardrop.
Huh.
I mentioned teardrops years ago. Everyone said they didn't exist. Now they reckon. They agree. Teardrops exist. Years ago, I wrote about latitudinal streams, where you have a stream running along, a stream of meteor falls along a particular latitude or longitude or a particular angle.
Mm-hmm.
No. Modern science said, no, doesn't exist, don't exist. Buddy, last 10 years have acknowledged. Remember, it's only 30 years since Alvarez brought up the theory that the Chicxulub impact apparently wiped out the dinosaurs, which is a great theory. Yeah, I love your theory.
Now, is that the one that hit in the Gulf of Mexico?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm going to put another spanner in the works, as I always do. Are we?
I never liked that theory myself, but that's.
Oh, I like it.
I think it's a mainstream false perception to make you believe their agenda, and that's it. It kind of goes into like Darwinism,
Right.
in my opinion. And I'm not really into that old Darwinism that we're monkeys and we use 10% of our brain. And in fact, the idea of 10% using 10% of our brain is actually wrong. There was a brain surgeon back in the day, about 100 years ago, that was studying the human brain, and he said that we only understand 10% of our brain, and that got twisted into that we only use 10% of our brain. Where's that, George?
Is here.
Can you move that book so we can hear you as well?
Yeah, Chicxulub crater is a little 60-mile wide thing here,
Mm-hmm.
from 65 million BC approximately.
Right.
This thing next to it from the same period is the Cuba crater. No one ever mentions the Cuba crater.
I didn't even know there was a Cuba crater.
It's enormous. You look at the curve of the Antilles, it fits around it. That's why I like maps.
Mm-hmm.
It was more than likely the major progenitor of the destruction of the dinosaurs, or the apparent destruction of the dinosaurs. Even if it didn't wipe them out completely, it sure would have given them a headache. Because that would have still created possibly mile-high mile-high tidal waves, tilting of the Earth, and that brings us back to Hudson Bay. Up until 10,000 years ago, Hudson Bay was the North Pole.
Right.
Yeah.
And what happened with this?
Siberia.
But the problem is, as soon as the Bermuda area was hit, we had a 26.5-degree tilt.
Yep.
It suddenly meant that these poor big animals called mammoths, which were living in savannas, not Icelandic areas, but normal savannas with trees, same as the North American continent, were suddenly flipped 27.5 degrees in a matter of a very short time. With such power that mud streams, earthquakes, tidal waves tore trees, mammoths, and everybody into a frozen wilderness as their area of the earth suddenly went up here, where Siberia is now. They were snap frozen. Because weather stays where it always is, top and bottom of a planet.
Right.
It can't move. It's going to be freezing at the top and bottom, whichever way we tilt this thing.
Yeah.
But suddenly, it's tilted. And you know why? I keep I keep stating with proof why mammoths didn't live in the snow. Okay, they're big and hairy. I used to be big and hairy. Omar's big and hairy. I don't know you well enough at the moment.
Clarence is big and hairy.
Clarence is big and hairy. We aren't living on the tundra.
Yeah.
We aren't requiring half a ton of food per animal to eat per day.
Mm-hmm.
And the way of providing food for an animal that eats that much.
Right.
The lips of the mammoth and the mastodon were prehensile. By that I mean they're the same as the Indian elephant.
Right.
Their nearest relative. They're designed to eat leaves off trees. You don't have trees in the tundra. The highest trees are wattle that grows to 6 inches. That's not going to feed a mammoth for 2 seconds. You're more than likely going to sit on it rather than eat it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But tilt the earth back to where it was, you got beech forests, deciduous forests, because that's what we found in the animal stomachs. The advantage of having snap frozen mammoths is you know what's in their bellies.
Clarence and I have talked about this before.
Yeah.
Where the earth had a different tilt, almost like an upright, like kind of like a top.
Yeah.
Right? Like when you spin a top, it spins perfectly and you touch it, right? It wobbles side to side. And that's kind of what I've stated, that's what's happened to the earth. And very recently too, like 10, 12,000 years ago, where the earth kind of went from like this to that.
We've had 271 major earth tilts in the earth's history that we know of.
Mm-hmm.
And that's by looking at fossil magnetism, which way the magnetic field points in fossil rocks. It's pretty exacting. It's very good. It's proof it's there. It's a magnetic field. You can't change it. You can't alter it. It's sitting there.
Right.
Yeah.
And there have been 6 that were total flip-flops. North became south. Now imagine that one. Holy mother of God, if you're religious or even non-religious. It's probably the last thing you'd see. We looked at massive destruction, the end of an ice age.
Can you move closer to your mic, George?
Yep, okay, how's this?
Yeah, that's better.
That's better. Oh, you can see my mush a lot better, though. That's an old term, that one. I'm not sure if it's even known in Canada or North America.
No, I don't. I've never heard it.
Yeah. Oh, you can use it.
I'll credit it to you.
Okay. It's probably even extinct in Australia and England now. What happened is our poor old Earth did this.
Yes.
The North Pole then moved to where it is now. The magnetic pole moved to Greenland. Millions and millions of mammoths and mastodons in North America and Siberia died, trapped in freezing mudslides. When you find their bodies, they're wrapped in trees. The trees are broken. There are whole mountains. The Kolyma Islands in the Arctic are composed totally of mammoth bones. They were the largest source of piano ivory in the world in the 19th century. There are advantages to gathering data from everywhere. You pick up themes and streams that no one else does. Even that piano ivory one, that's where most of it came from, dead mammoths.
Mm-hmm.
So next time you look at your old piano, don't feel guilty. He was dead already. Nobody went out and killed him. But at the same time, North America, here, bang, Hudson Bay, 2-mile thick ice mass, cracked. Bits of ice, not just stone, ice masses like icebergs flying out in every direction from it. Equidistant around Hudson Bay. If you look in Carolina, the Carolinas, Georgia, Wyoming, some parts of the South, Florida, you will find elliptical lakes. Not round. These are ellipses, ovals, with a high southernmost edge and an almost non-existent northernmost edge. They're called the bays. Check them on Google Earth. They're amazing looking things. They even overlap each other. So whoever worked out how to overlap a lake. What happened with the ice masses when they erupted from the North Pole area and the Great Lakes region, which incidentally were formed in this period? And when the St. Lawrence Seaway opened and a lot of water rushed down the Mississippi Valley, plus the major Columbia River valleys of Oregon, Washington, there's water, there's ice, and there's exploding ice. The reason these ellipses have no remains in them is because our ice mass is hitting them. They skid along, creating an ellipse with a high edge on this end. We are looking at thousands of miles from the original source. We have 1,000-foot tsunamis crashing across the earth. You know, we have a total change of everything. And that's just one little thing.
The mud floods?
Yeah, mud floods, everything. Are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yep.
It was responsible for most of the that period, 11 to 10,000 BC. The pictures, I must admit, are better in my books with the different impact streams that occurred, whole clusters of meteors. This wasn't one meteor shower. This was several. The biggest one being that one over Bermuda, causing the teardrop effect over North America. This was a portion of that meteoric body that hit Hudson Bay. It changed world history forever. It wiped out the American elephant, the American mammoth, which eventually died by 4,000 years ago. Though, what's that?
The camel as well?
Yeah, all of them. American camel, mastodon, mammoth. Mammoth actually stayed around till 4,000 BC. There are American Indian legends of it, but they were getting very scarce by then.
Well, they had drawings of them on the walls and stuff. I mean,
yeah, everywhere.
They're carved in rock.
Yeah. And one of the major features of Magdalenian art prior to the cataclysm was mammoths.
Right. Absolutely.
And they're gone.
Yeah.
And it wasn't man hunting these gigantic megafauna to death, which also happened at the same time in Australia and worldwide. It was this cometary cataclysm, or this meteoric cataclysm.
So I got to ask you something, George, not to interrupt you or anything, but
no, feel free.
So when this happens and it basically flash freezes everything, that's the way I look at it anyway, and the mammoths and that die off and stuff, what happens to man himself?
Man's pretty indestructible. He knows how to survive. He's fast enough, but he's quick enough, and sometimes he's lucky enough. Thousands of legends. I've got them in another book. I've got them in several books. In other words, one book called Goodbye Siberian Woolly Mammoth, which is another ponderous, great fat thing, which I started writing about the same time, maybe earlier than the book on we were discussing originally. Hundreds of legends from every culture on Earth: Aboriginal, American Indian, Indian, Egyptian, European, Chinese, Siberian, you name it. If humans have lived on it, that we can actually get a record from or a verbal history from. So far, we haven't met anyone in the Arctic, in the Antarctic, I'm sorry, but we can leave that out of it. Mention deluge saviors who gathered some animals and got into a boat or a dugout canoe or onto a raft or grabbed hold of a tree. And that most people were killed because it was the gods doing this. No, it wasn't the gods. It was this great flaming thing that came out of the sky and crashed into the sea. But to Paleolithic people, that's God. That thing can kill me in a megasecond. That's why wouldn't I call it God?
Sure. Yeah.
It became the gods. It became the history of the gods and the almighty gods. And it's a cosmological phenomenon that struck our planet. These people, as I think Plato mentions it in one of his writings, the Roman writer, he said they were like shipwrecked people. They had to build up civilization from the remains of civilization. So they lost a lot of knowledge, but they still started building again. Wherever they end up, it was safe. We have dead periods in history then. But you have sites like Catalhuyuk appearing. You have other sites around the world from the same period that start appearing, and they're pretty inland. We're getting a little wary of the sea by now.
Yeah.
No wonder. The sea is death. But eventually, man, not using the sexist or gender specificist term, just a simple term for bipeds on this planet that walk around and explore and eat and procreate, still went back to the sea because the sea was how you travelled. This could go to a whole segue to another thing. Let's get some more questions.
So when these tsunamis were happening, we have these lake creatures like the Loch Ness Monster and the Ogopogo, which is not too far from me. The Ogopogo is just right over the hill and in the Okanagan Lake.
Right.
Do you think that that they may have been kind of like pushed because of the tsunami into this water, and then over time they just kind of adapted to fresh water instead of salt water? Or if these things are even real for that matter, like the Loch Ness Monster, for instance, in Scotland, the most famous one. Or do you think they're like sturgeons? There's a theory that these things are like sturgeons that are like 30 feet long, 40 feet long, and because sturgeons can grow quite long. So in your opinion, what do you think these are? Do you think these are like prehistoric animals, or are they like just sturgeons that are like really, really old?
The sturgeons are prehistoric. And your locals would know a sturgeon from a lake monster.
Mm-hmm.
They used to fish them.
Yeah, no,
They just say that's a bloody big sturgeon and I want to get it.
Yeah.
Whereas this thing comes along with 4 paddles and a long neck, they don't want to go anywhere near it.
Yeah, like I had a friend in Kelowna who said that she'd seen the Ogopogo on a couple of occasions, and she said it had the neck of a horse, right? And then it had the face, the snout of an alligator, and the body of almost kind of like a snake.
That's one of the problems. And that gets back to the first book we discussed.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, I wish I could remember the names of it sometimes. I'll put it down here. Wormholes through space and time. It's hard because I don't think much of titles. I just write them. Then I think of a title when I finished it. tend to get a little frenzied about writing. Once again, we get back to these sine waves. Yes, the sturgeons were probably trapped there in those lakes. But where these sine waves intersect that I discussed at the beginning of this program, that's where people are seeing things. Because the problem is, even with Bigfoot and Ogopogo, especially with lake monsters, oddly enough, and sea monsters, quite often, same lake, different witnesses, total different description. Loch Ness Monster's a good one for that. In the 1880s, he was seen as a big frog. 1890s, he was seen as a big amphibian, like a giant slug. Other times, he was your typical plesiosaurian Nessie, which we've grown to know and love. But how the hell are they seeing this damn thing as different animals? Are they creating that phenomena in an image they can recognize?
Kind of like where you see images in clouds. What's that called?
It's the same as when you see images on the earth in rocks and the rest of it, which gets really confusing for New Age archaeology.
Yeah.
But what happens in that first book, the Wormholes one, these wormholes, when you approach it or accidentally end up in it, you are met with the power of the universe. You meet with, and we have to go into a bit of physics now. So we keep running. There are 4 states of matter. Solid, very low vibration rate of the electrons. Liquid, the electron rate is sped up. Gas, the electron rate is getting really sped up. Plasma, not blood plasma, gas plasma, where
like the
sun. Electron rate is moving so fast it is causing explosions. Plasma is what you get in the middle of a nuclear explosion. You are liberating the electrons from their magnetic field that's holding them together. And then we have the 5th state of matter, the thumb of it all, the quasar vacuum. And this all sounds weird, but everything we've discussed is weird. There hasn't been one normal subject we've discussed. The quasar vacuum, quasar physics, is where matter is moving so fast and the electrons are moving so fast they're in 2 dimensions at once. That makes it interesting. Because we're meeting this energy source coming into our dimension. Our brain can't work out what it is. It's stuffed. And to protect itself, it creates that thing in an image it recognizes. That's why we go back to the beginning. That's why hunters, in a lot of cases, see Bigfoot. That's why religious people see the Virgin Mary standing in a tree. Because their brain has to adapt or they'll go stark raving mad. That's why other people see Orthon from Venus and whatever. In a lot of cases. I'm not saying all. I'm saying a lot. The brain is adapting. And the thing is, it adapts it so well, in a lot of cases, this particular event leaves physical trace evidence.
Right.
That's when it gets interesting. Footprints, burnt leaves, conjunctivitis. You know, these aren't just hallucinations. Even having rocks thrown at you. You know, a lot of Bigfoot events are rocks. And incidentally, 2 things which no one has ever bothered to mention in any Bigfoot book because of the native coyness of the North American market. And I think you'll both enjoy this. We have every report of Bigfoot under the sun. We have big arthropoid apes. We have Bigfoots coming out of UFOs. And we have the Wendigo and the interdimensional Bigfoots. All 3 are above, and all 3 probably exist. My proof for the anthropoid ape theory is it's 3 o'clock in the morning. You're driving across Alberta, or maybe better, British Columbia, and you have to get out for a leak, or to relieve oneself, as they say in North America. Totally different meaning in Australia. And, you know, the good old boys get out the side, you know, probably chat a bit, light up a smoke, whittling away, and next second something starts screaming, yelling, throwing rocks, bashing trees, generally going apeshit, because it's an ape. You are pissing on its territory. You're claiming its territory. That's why it's upset.
Mhm.
That's why it's trying to tell you to fuck off as fast as possible.
Right.
That is not an interdimensional animal doing that. And it's not the ones we've recorded on the East Coast in a lot of cases coming out of UFOs. It's just a big anthropoid creature. It's very clever, very well disguised, and doesn't like us that much. Probably because we try and kill it. But the funny thing is, okay, my last 4 books on Bigfoot were 1,200 pages. Let's say 8 to 10 items per page. That's 12,000, 13,000 sightings leaving trace evidence, or good handwritten evidence. What I mean by handwritten evidence is I publish people's first-person events. A lot of people write, in 1832, somebody saw a Bigfoot in Sleepy Hollow. In 1833, somebody saw a Bigfoot in something hollow 10 miles away. Oh, God, how the hell can you read that? It's soporific. It's so boring.
Yeah.
I publish the people talking, the people feeling, the people emoting, their words in most cases, of how they're driving along or walking along, and suddenly this event happens that scares the crap out of them. You can't fake that. You can't fake that emotionalism. That's why my books are popular, because you can read them and you're in them. As some poor bastard said once, he said, I read your books and it's like I'm talking to you. And every time I think I've got an answer to something, you bring me another question. And the reason's why the previous answer doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
You know, we have to think through these things. But why haven't we then? America, a nation of hunters, they like killing everything, including each other. You know, they love their guns. Why haven't we got a Bigfoot stuck on a wall in a barn or a study with some redneck yobbo standing next to us? I caught this one down in 79.
Yeah, I've always wondered about that.
Where aren't they?
Yeah.
That's when we had to bring in the theory of the Windigo, the interdimensions. Because if we look at the original sine waves again, these are areas opening between dimensions.
It's kind of like that dude from in Florida that flew his plane and he landed in Miami Beach in like 35 minutes, and it was supposed to be like an hour and a half trip, and he said he went through like some sort of like a cloud tunnel. And,
a wormhole.
A shortened time for him, and an hour and a half flight was only like a half an hour. You're probably aware of that case that I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. We can use wormholes if we bother to map them correctly. I've done the groundwork. I've validated the theory. I'm not a computer person. I also have lots of other books to write, and I've still got more to do. And hopefully my health will stay. Mind you, I've had 3 operations in the last 3 weeks. And I can write more. And I've got some major ones to write about coming up. Mind you, a lot of people regard the ones I've written as major ones. And I've gone blank again. More questions.
You were talking about wormholes and the guy in Florida with the airplane that flew through the Bermuda Triangle.
We can use wormholes to travel through the multiverse, because that's how other sentient entities, is a good word for it, travel from other points in the multiverse and the universe to get to us. If you use a wormhole, there's no time and there's no space.
Right.
So the concept of distance between areas is gone. Have you ever played with a thing called a Möbius strip? It's a single piece of paper. You wrap it into a figure 8 and you staple one end of it and you run a pen across it. My God, the pen is on both sides of it and meets the part that hasn't been written on yet.
Right.
That's a Möbius strip. It technically is a one-dimensional object. The bit where it crosses over is a wormhole. Because both are the same dimension. Both sides are the one dimension.
Clarence, why don't you tell George your thoughts that you've been thinking lately on wormholes?
Well, my theory, and that's just what it is, because I'm having a hard time with quantum physics and all this other stuff that goes along.
Yeah, it's all too complex.
Yeah. My whole thing was you take people, all right, we'll take a few categories, for instance, missing people. And I'm not talking about abductions or, anything like that. I'm just saying that people that just disappear, no trace, none of that. Deja vu, out of body experiences. Another one I put in there was spontaneous human combustion, which is a really, a lot of people don't know about that particular thing. But you take all these categories, and according to Einstein and his theories and stuff, they came up with 6 different types of wormhole/portals. The one-way, the two-way, the intra, and so on and so forth. And it was I'm kind of believing or thinking on the basis of the person's energy and the magnetic anomalous of the earth itself, that these things could open up anytime, anywhere, and depending on which one you go through or use, is how this works. If you're using a one-way, or you get caught up in a one-way, you just up and disappear and never seen again, no trace. If you're using a two-way, you're having like an out-of-body experience, or even deja vu, something along that nature. I forget the name of the other one, but it collapses in, on a person, which would be like spontaneous combustion on the human body. Ghost, different things like that, different entities that show up, and whatever. Basically all on a parallel type, wormhole or travel, portal or whatever. So, this is what I've been theorizing about and what I've come up with, But a lot of it's based on the person's energy, how old a person is, how good health a person is, kind of like a car battery. The stronger the energy level, the better the portal, Yeah.
What a bad concept. Let's add that to that. There's a line there.
Mm-hmm.
Now remember, all this stuff is random and it's not supposed to exist.
Right.
That's the 1897 airship flap. I don't know if you've heard of it or not.
No. Nope.
Okay, 1896 to 1897, November to June. West Coast, North America. Started Washington, Oregon, BC, which is British Columbia, down to California. They started seeing airships, all shapes, all sizes, all types, with big propellers, no propellers, wings, naked women, hairy things, you name it. And it continued the following year, heading east and southeast through Texas. And there were thousands of them, and thousands of reports of them. And as I said, all shapes, all sizes.
Right.
And aeronautically, none of it could fly if they tried. You don't build big winged things as airships. They only need a thing the size of a fan.
Right.
To power them, because they're lighter than air. To move them. They don't need giant rotors, would have destroyed them.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say we have visitors from another dimension. They've got the same map as this for the universe. These little ones join up, it's only a local trip. The bigger ones, you can see the bigger curves, that's a longer trip.
Wow.
Where they intersect is the strength. And how many intersect together at the time means you're getting a real energy feed there, a real huge interdimensional warp. And once again, add the concept that earthquake, the person viewing is trying to adapt that to their technological prowess and their religious ideas, these orbs and lights in the sky with apparent humanoids suddenly became airships. Suddenly became people saying they're going to go to Cuba to help in the whatever war it was at the time. I think it was the one Teddy Roosevelt was involved with. All these things keep trying to normalize the situation. Normalization is very powerful.
Right.
And it's your own brain's idea, your own brain's normalization. It has to normalize it or it goes stark raving mad. Mind you, everyone will think you're mad anyway.
True. Yeah.
Just for saying you saw 6 people descend from this giant thing that's, I've got reports where they say, I've been on board the airship. It's been powered by a Westinghouse compressor. I talked to the conductor on it. Excuse me? Same as when we're looking at later UFO sightings. I saw monitors. I saw dials. But in what technological age were we seeing them? Nobody reports what they actually look like.
Right.
That's the hard part. They can't describe the level of technology because looking back now at the 60s and 70s, say for UFO reports and contactee reports, the proper technology of an artificial machine should be far more advanced than what we have now with touch screens and things like that.
Right.
But it's a few grey, black and white monitors showing the Earth or Alpha Centauri or somewhere. The human observer participating in the event, which is as real as rocks and dirt, is translating it. So it could understand it as it explains it, or he or she or it, or whatever anagrams we use these days for people. In archaeology, fortunately, there's only male and female when you look at skeletons. We haven't got the rest of it.
So while these abductions are happening, people are reporting physical abductions, right? And some of them are coming back with marks, some tracking devices, and some, majority of them have their memories cleared, and they have to go to a hypnotist to, get these memories back. What do you think about that? Like, what's going on? Are these
many cases that could have existed?
Like a sentient being, or is this like a part of a different event?
It could be part of a different event. Some state that people go back to. Graham Hancock brought up not a concept he brought up, but he adapted a concept by Desmond Leslie from the early 60s of a goblin universe, of a demon universe, where it's the same old demonology and fairies and everything we've recorded for thousands of years, with a more up-to-date technological touch to it. As we keep improving in how we observe the universe, the phenomena keeps improving. It's always one step ahead of how we view the universe or are currently capable of doing anything in it. And that was the same with when the fairies used to kidnap people who walked twice around the sacred mounds near the mushrooms. And I'm not mentioning eating the mushrooms, I'm just talking about them.
Right.
And then suddenly finding their children being taken or they're being impregnated by some local demon. What? Now, let's go to paranoia plus level now. The multiverse has civilizations, civitas meaning a city, a functioning organic whole that people live in, or whatever. What better way to travel through the multiverse to have a look around and to use the observer's description as your camouflage?
Right.
You come to Earth, that observer provides your camouflage. That observer goes to town and says, I saw a big Bigfoot out in the hills there and he chased me down the street and his UFO came after me. And he's scared shitless.
Yep.
And he's written it down in more words than that. Yes, we could say, did it exist? Let's allow for it existing. The actual event existed.
For that person, it did.
For that person, it did.
Right.
But what better camouflage for an exploring entity?
Right.
It
Right.
becomes the light in the sky. Because looking at the data,
Why
I
not be a
tried
dog
to reduce.
or a cat?
Sorry,
Why not be like a dog, an elephant, or a duck, or a cat, or a bird
they also react.
to experience this frequency, as I would call it? This is essentially what it is.
They do. There are lots of reports of animals reacting. Cows running around in corners, horses racing across paddocks, birds falling out of the sky.
Yeah.
Yes, everything views it. If it's sentient, it'll view it.
Mm-hmm.
What was that, Clarence?
I said we talked about that just the other day with the birds falling out of the sky.
Yeah.
Yeah, the invisible wall phenomenon.
Yeah, I had a thought. Yeah, exactly. I had a thought about that. That possibly they actually hit something in the sky, invisible to us, obviously, but some type of a sound wave or something that happened or was about to happen, and they crashed into it and it killed them.
Or a learner driver coming from another dimension.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because sometimes we have the stupidest driving techniques of UFOs that you can imagine.
Mhm.
The advantage of amassing so much data is you see the stupidest patterns. UFOs crashing through billboards and things like that. Obviously, the steering wasn't too good. Knocking off church steeples, heading off again.
Roswell is
obviously on their L plates.
But if they're using a tractor beam or something of that nature, or a portal or a wormhole, so be it, whatever, if a billboard's there, it's going to be in their way anyway, right? I mean, when they
Well,
have,
this is after they've been seen for a while.
Yeah.
We've got to allow for an inefficient universe.
Yeah.
That random things like that do occur. But what a great way of getting around. You've managed to transfer your body into pure energy to go across the quasar vacuum through the multiverse, got rid of time and space, and you can show up in any form of UFO possible because they're reported as any form of UFO and any form of shape, from triangular to square to beer can size to
Tic Tac. Yeah.
name it.
Yeah.
Roswell
The multiplicity. But economically speaking, if an economic project is not viable, it will not be paid for. So you're not going to produce 800,000 different spaceships that are all different. It's not economically viable.
Right.
Not when you're traveling through a multiverse.
What if
Or
it's economics?
because everything's ruled by economics. There's always somebody paying the bill for it. There's always somebody through some, not necessarily cash, there's always something that needs to be exchanged for something else to create something that you didn't have. That's economics. It's like the pyramids in Egypt. They wouldn't have built them if they didn't think they got something out of it. They would have said, what the hell are you doing? I'm not building that.
What do you think about Stephen Meyer's water pump theory about the pyramids?
Oh, I've read so many theories. I've owned so many books on different theories.
It's interesting. He's saying what you just said, is that they wouldn't have built it if there was no immediate turnaround from it, and they used it as a water pump to pretty much pump the fields and grow their crops.
Yeah. But there's one small problem with that. And that's where we have to allow for weather. And my next major book is on weather. And it's probably going to annoy the crap out of everybody. It is going to piss off so many people. It is going to be wonderful. I reckon it's the most pissing off book I will ever create. Apparently, the Sphinx and the Pyramid of Khufu and that were built around about 2,500 BC. And we have this image of Egypt, land of dust, desert, sand, more sand, sand. Yeah, more sand and sand. That's now.
What was it, 12,000 years ago?
2,500 to 3,000 years ago was the end of a pluvial period. Pluvial periods is a wanky term for rainy period that had lasted 8,000 years after the last cataclysm, and still lasted for about another 1,500 years, which meant that when they were building the pyramids, and oddly enough, the Nile ran in front of the Great Pyramid, almost directly to the base of it, it was green.
Yeah, I've
A
said that
savanna
before.
with lakes, grass, everything. Don't need a pump when you've got the Nile sitting in front of you. I've had it said that
That's
the
a
Great
good point.
Pyramid's like an orgone reactor. If you look at Wilhelm Reich's work, others say it's a cosmic generator. It could be. But all I know is that if people sit in it long enough, they'll get bored shitless and leave. Because nothing is happening. Because if you look at the graph again, and this brings me to another part, one of the mysteries that always amazed me was, why do these rotten civilizations build these massive pyramids and temple complexes and then move to another spot and build another enormous pyramid and temple complex? Why the hell are they moving these damn things? Because these move.
Right. Right.
Every 56 years in most cases, even if you look at Central American archaeology, they moved. 56 years is the sidereal time relationship of Venus to the planet Earth. They believed that it kept moving. They had an idea. They knew how to get the real. They said they built the pyramids, whether it was Sumeria, whether it was amongst the pre-Druidic people of Europe, the people of the pre-mound builders, whatever. They built these towers for the gods, these pyramids for the gods, because they met the gods on them. They didn't say, oh, no, we'll use it as a broadcasting medium. No, they said, we meet the gods land on them. And everyone believed it.
Some
And
are even
everyone
more,
saw them.
like the Temple of the Dome in Jerusalem, where Muhammad ascended into the heavens. Supposedly a UFO landed there and grabbed Muhammad and fucked off with him, and came back about a week later and dropped him off in the same spot, and now it's revered, and they built that big mosque around it.
But it was also the most sacred site in Judaism. It was the site of Solomon's temple. So they knew something was there at that spot. They wanted to fight to the death over, which they still do. What the hell? The blocks in it are called Cyclopean blocks. They're enormous.
Right.
If you could whip up... I haven't got it. Yes, I have. One moment, please. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Too many books, not enough time. Oh, there you are. Here we are. Another little thing I whipped up. Amazing archaeology.
Yeah.
Well, do you see that thing on the cover?
Yeah.
Isn't that the biggest office in the world?
It's one of the largest. It's got 3 sisters, as far as I know. That is a Hajara Hubla.
Isn't that thing like 2,500 tons?
1,500.
1,500 tons.
Yes, but still, you try moving the thing.
Yeah,
It's outside the terrace of Baalbek in Lebanon. The terrace of Baalbek was where Baal, the great storm god, came down to earth. And it was just originally a big flat terrace made out of them. Because you can still see them
try
at 20
something
meters up in the air in the walls of the terrace. Same size. Next to it, they found another 3, which are bigger. The stone to the south and 2 other ones in the last 2 years. Nobody knows how to cut them. Probably took a lot of manual work. But how do you move it?
Ice.
Some people say levitation.
Everything's frozen. They pushed them across.
It wasn't frozen then. We're only talking a few thousand years. But the problem with rocks is you can't date them.
No, that's true. Yeah.
Question is why build so big? Why not just be moderate and build according to like your own size? Why
because this is where the gods arrived.
Right.
And
Yep.
you know how the gods are depicted as arriving in every world culture with fire and flame bellowing from underneath their chariots.
Yep.
Yeah.
We talked
That
about
isn't horse carting. That's fire and flame coming out of this large metal thing that's come down out of the sky. So for it to land somewhere, you built this bloody great stone construction.
Hmm. Now, don't
That's
you
the
find
same shape and type as the Dome of a Rock in
I
Jerusalem.
talked about this before. Don't you find the technology to be a bit outdated with flames and stuff coming out from underneath them when we have these UFOs that emit nothing and they're silent and move around, and
I think there are lots of different types.
because you
That's
figure
a
if
very
you're
primitive technology. It wouldn't go very far.
and if you're using say flames coming out, you're using some sort of a gaseous fuel or a fossil fuel, so
Or
your
a
range,
massive electric fuel.
yeah, and
Think
your
of the
range,
Ark of the Covenant.
yeah.
It was meant to electrocute anyone who touched it.
right.
Hmm.
It had rubber, it had the
Range,
equivalent of insulated grips on the arms.
you'd need
And what
fuel, right? You'd run out of fuel, and your range would be limited.
very much so.
What I've proposed is that these gods, that are landing here on Earth, were actually the civilization that lived on Mars, and had the technology to what we have today, and they had it several thousand years ago, and they were the ones that were traveling here to Earth, and mixing with the natives here, and then use their fuel to go back to Mars. And that's why we see these rockets that are, thrusting, smoke and fire and such. And we see the exact same thing coming from Cape Canaveral. So for me, the technology just, doesn't power up to an intergalactic civilization that's here. More like
Correct.
a neighborhood. They're more in a neighborhood than anything
It's
else.
Flash Gordon.
System.
It's a Flash Gordon way of traveling the universe, but certainly not the multiverse. And I
Yeah.
like that theory. For instance, for little hops in between, probably a great idea, a great way of doing it. And that's why you'd build that technology.
Well, here's my deal too. We're talking about wormholes and stuff like that. According to Einstein, okay, you should be able to bend space, right?
Yeah.
And then you be able to go from one end to the other in a shorter distance of time. Okay. Here's the problem I have with that. Space expands and is expanding. It's a never-ending growing facade.
It's like a bubble.
So how can you fold something in half when you don't know where the middle is?
That's a
Yeah,
great
I
thought.
find it a bit hard to work that one out as well. I'll stick to my Möbius strip theory, where you just leave anywhere you wanted it according to the sine waves,
Yes.
which once again removes the need for big, hairy, flaming rockets to come crashing down onto a stone platform. But that might be good for local people. But I'm just going to throw another spanner into the works. What if a primitive Flash Gordon style technology is only used from other cultures on Earth that have since disappeared?
Very well.
Yeah, that's what I was saying in what I just said earlier. Travelers coming from Mars, we see a lot of technology here on Earth. So, with the elongated skulls, for instance, they could have been part of that civilization that came here. And we know that there was a war here on Earth. We hear about it in the Mahabharata and the Ramayanas and, other literature across the world. So what I've thought about is that there was some sort of a war, possibly between Mars and Earth, or maybe Mars and Earth teamed up and fought something else, but Mars ended up losing, and Earth ended up going into a very prolonged ice age, and kind of what destroyed us, and we just emerged really out of our cave, 10, 12,000 years ago when the ice began melting. Now I say this because the Hopi, they say that the ant people took them underground, and there they remained there and came out later. So what I'm thinking is that they probably stayed there for several thousand years, And that's why most of that technology was lost. Because when we look at places like Egypt or megalithic sites in South America, we see great big megalithic work, right? Obviously constructed by an advanced civilization, and then next to it we see like smaller stones and rubble that are trying to repair it. So what I thought is that while humanity was underground, like cities like Kuyu, while they were underground over a course of several hundred generations, or probably in a few thousand generations, that knowledge was lost. And they were aware of these sites that were already on Earth, and when they emerged, they saw that they were damaged, so they began repairing it. That's why the Egyptians, they use like a smaller blocks made out of soapstone instead of granite like their predecessors did.
Yeah. And I did think of something and I forgot it. Yes, back to Plato again, the Roman writer, with the analogy of shipwrecked beings when he said in the past, cultures have been shipwrecked. He also mentioned, and then it happened again. So you have a shipwrecked culture being shipwrecked again, which means it's even less of the old technology, because they've only managed to save the bits that they salvaged the first time after the disaster. So it's a multiple shipwrecking. No, I agree with that one quite well. You look at a lot of South American ruins and you got magnificent megalithic stones, beautifully cut, and then a pile of crap standing on top of it.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah, like Sextawomen in Cusco.
Yeah.
The lower levels are great. The upper levels, I think the home handyman came in and, like we have in suburbs today, and just wanted to build something on top of it.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking as well. It's like same as the stones that you were talking about in Lebanon. I forgot what they're called, but they
At Baalbek, yes.
Baalbek, they came along afterwards and built what was that Temple of Jupiter on there, or
Romans built it.
Yeah,
but there's no history for the actual terrace. But the Romans knew it was important, so that's why they built on it. And it's interesting, as Jupiter, the king of the gods. It was the biggest temple of Jupiter in the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
Near a village, it was almost totally unimportant, not even in a major centre. Which makes it, why build it there? I mean, even without the terrace, the temple of Jupiter's got columns 20 meters high.
All right.
That's pretty tall. That's like
top of a terrace at 20 meters high.
So what is that, about 50 feet?
60 feet.
60 feet.
Yeah, that's pretty tall.
So that's very tall.
Some of the cathedrals that are in France, like that one that took 400 years to build, 500 years to build. I forget.
Most of them did.
Which one?
Most of them did in Europe and England. They took hundreds of years to build.
Yeah, some of them are like 50, 60 feet high. The ceiling. The ceiling is like
higher.
Yeah, 70, 80, 100 feet high, some of them. So, yeah.
What would have been beautiful, unfortunately through history, originally those Gothic cathedrals were all painted and gilded inside. So everything was bright colours, not grey like it is now. So that the average peasants who lived in a hovel had a lifespan of 18 to 20 in the medieval period and came into this light-filled, colour-filled masterpiece, it would be like walking into heaven.
Sure.
Yeah.
It would be so overpowering. I think you could virtually have a spiritual orgasm when you come into it. When you compare it to your normal crappy life living in a birch bark hut somewhere.
Yeah. Well, I'd be in the cathedral every day.
Yeah.
Morning tonight, I'd be a volunteer.
Well, I know we've managed.
Go ahead,
managed to get through a few subjects today. Let's add some more.
So, I just wanted to go back to the rocket travel within our solar system. That the descriptions that we see in the Bible and other books and such. For me, when I see that and when I hear that, for me, like I said, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense because it's not really technologically advanced.
Antiquated.
Yeah, for someone to, be space traveling, like for instance, say you wanted to go to Andromeda, which is the closest galaxy to us, and that would take them, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years.
Yeah, even to get to Alpha Centauri, it'd take ages.
Yeah, like it would have to be, very local travel. But what do you think about, like most stars, they say are binary or tri-star systems, and our sun possibly has a a binary friend called Nemesis. And what if Nemesis has a which probably it does, a solar system, and in that solar system there's an Earth-like planet, and Zachariah Sitchin wrote about the Anunnaki, and that when they're orbiting like this at their closest range, when our star and their star is close by, that they're possibly using this rocket-based technology to, travel from their solar system into ours. And when the sun's coming around again, then they hitch a ride back, because some of these guys ruled for, tens of thousands of years. But if you take in consideration that, they say that their planet is in the orbit of, 3,500-year orbit. So biological being that accustomed to that planet, 3,500 years for us would really mean that only 1 year has gone by for them, right? It would be kind of like us moving to Pluto, and Pluto takes 72 years to go around the Earth, right? For us, that will be 72 years pass by on Pluto instead of Pluto's 1 year.
Problem with that is, whatever star, Zachariah Sitchin mentions Nibiru as the home of the Anunnaki. If we had a dark star, it wouldn't provide any light for chlorophyll or life. Whatever it is, still has to produce sunlight.
Yeah, they say Nemesis is a red dwarf brown star, and if it's in the Goldilocks zone, this planet, then it would have enough light and heat to to have life on it. Maybe not like ours, but possibly like light sensitive life forms.
Yeah, because life forms need light and heat. We know that.
They
They also need moisture and oxygen and the Goldilocks zone. But if it's a red dwarf and it's closer to us than Alpha Centauri, which is our closest neighbor, we would have seen it by now. You can't stay permanently hidden behind Jupiter,
Right,
or behind Uranus, or behind Neptune. Because one thing is humans have been doing for a long time, for thousands of years, and documented very well, is scanning the heavens. And you know why they're so good at scanning the heavens? And why they built Stonehenge and every observatory on Earth? Because they're terrified of another meteoric impact like 10,000 years ago. And then when you allow for the fact that these impacts also occurred 6,000 years ago, 3,200 years ago, around about 2,000 years ago, and 14, 15, 1600, there's a dead period there in the second millennium, which I tried writing about, but I couldn't work out how this chronology worked in it, so I stopped. One day I might. And that was one of the worst. And that was when an apparent Arten star came to Earth, which they called Venus, but I believe that was misinterpreted. It actually meant something coming from the direction of Venus, which would be something coming as a return voyage after being around the sun. And the problem, this Arten comet was here for a long time, for several months, which doesn't make it a normal comet. The beauty of it is, and the reason we remember this Arten comet, is it was a rise of Artenism, or one god in Egypt. It was a rise of 36 different monotheistic religions in the Middle East and the Mediterranean and Southern Europe, whilst this comet was happily wandering around, with fragments actually hitting the Earth at the time. The same time as the Santorini eruption, the same time as volcanic eruptions in Arabia and Sinai, the same time as massive tidal wave and earthquake damage in the Eastern Mediterranean and in Egypt, plagues, fire from the sky, everything. Some very heavy shit was going on in this period. And they kept watching the sky because this thing was causing it. In Greek mythology, it was, what was his name? Starts with P. Not Persephone. Anyway, it'll come back later, and if it doesn't, it's unimportant. But that entire area, the Eastern Mediterranean, was damaged. Cultures disappeared completely, and there was a 300-year period after Mycenae fell, Crete fell, Egypt went into a dark period, Troy collapsed, and the other major culture, Hattusas, etc., all perished at the same time, all became depopulated at the same time. 300 years of barbarism, they called it, before civilization rose again. And that's why they'd continued the observations of the sky for these rogue comets and meteors that come around.
Dark Ages in Europe is a period that they called it?
No, that was later.
Okay.
That was more a destruction of knowledge after the Roman Empire fell.
Right. Yeah.
But oddly enough, there were weird meteoric things happening 4th and 5th century AD. And 6th century, the Great Death occurred in the west of England. And the Great Death they now worked out was a methane explosion that wiped out most of the living things in the west of England. It came up out of the sea, same as what we'll probably see in Siberia, as methane is released from under the sea again, where it's been held for many thousands of years. This is a far more complex world than we give it credit for. A far more complex history of the world than ever been given credit for. I even mentioned this, the second millennium. Actually, I've got all of them in different books, but I haven't written the individual book on each yet. As you were saying before, with the loss of the city of Dvarka and the Mahabharata and all the other major sacred texts of the subcontinent of India, the Vimanas are powered by Mercury, but it's still primitive technology. But they mention this period, same time, oddly enough, 1600, 1500 BC, same period, for all these things to be occurring, and different cultures on Earth crashing into each other and trying to kill each other.
Right.
Like Mohenjo-Daro disappeared around that same time as well.
Yeah, a couple of 100 years earlier. But it's such a confused period. Like you've got the sunken city of Dvarka at 3200 BC, and the cities of the early Vedas that were founded by Vishnu, if I remember rightly, that have disappeared into the sea. You've got Adam's Bridge collapsing between Sri Lanka and Tamil India. Yeah, Rama's Bridge.
Roman's Bridge. Yep.
They can see that from space.
Yeah. And there was a railway line running on it until 1977, I think.
Yeah, they said that it was built by Rama and his blue monkey army.
Yeah, under Hanuman.
Yeah.
Hanuman was also 2IC and general in command in the Mahabharata.
Yeah.
And his 2IC was Lord Ganesha.
Yeah, yeah.
The elephant god. So we're finding stories and cities that we have found archaeologically.
Like Dwarka, for instance, they found it.
Yeah, they found Dwarka.
30 feet of water, about 30 feet, 40 feet of water. So it's not really even that far out. And destroyed, like I said in the book.
Yeah, no, it's amazing what we're finding, even from later periods like that.
Yep.
And we'll keep finding more. My job is to keep publicizing them.
Yeah.
I put them on my Facebook site when they come up. I put them on my author page. I wrote books about them. This thing is anomalous archaeology. None of this is meant to exist.
Right.
But it does.
Yeah.
And there's, what are we looking at? Nearly 500 pages.
Wow.
Another little coffee table book of mine. Put 4 legs on it, it becomes a coffee table.
I was going to ask you earlier when you were mentioning in the beginning of the show that you had to cut your book back to 804 pages.
Yeah.
And I did quick numerology in my head, and it turns out that it's the number 3. Did you do that, by design, or it just kind of just be like
840 pages is the maximum for a paperback.
840. Maximum?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that,
840 is the maximum I'll do for a paperback.
does that include the cover or just the pages?
What's that?
Does that include the cover or just the pages?
Yeah, that includes the covers. Yeah, because I always wanted to publish that book above all of my other ones, and I just had an urging that okay, I'm going to edit that. I'm going to make it a paperback. So when I fall off the perch, and we don't know when that might happen,
Right.
I want it around. I want it so people can access it. Same as with Goodbye Siberian Woolly Mammoth, which has got a lot of myths and legends and histories in it.
No, I'd like.
I decided to publish it.
Right.
And it's only 550 pages, something like that. I don't count them that often. As I said, I don't even count the number of books I've written.
33.
Yeah,
There's
probably.
the number, Clarence, 33.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing.
The number of destinies so far. Because we have 11, 22, and 33. But I haven't really looked into them like that so far. And 34 is on its way in the next 2 months.
Wow.
Hopefully. And that's volume 2 of Monsters, Encounters with Monsters and Mysteries of not Midwest, North America. I can never remember their names. Hang on, I'll go up this. Where are we? Anyway, it's the top half of North America in the middle, including Canada. So you got Alberta and Ontario and all the Midwest states, as they call them in the States. And it was too big for 2 books, so it's become too big for 1 book. So now it's become 2 books.
Cool.
Oh, that's more to the collection. So
yeah. I've still got books.
We've been at it for an hour and a half here. Sorry, George, go ahead.
I've still got books I haven't published in paperback yet. They're actually on the internet as ebooks only.
Do you write fiction stories, or
No.
do you just strictly stick to like factual and historical kind of stuff, or do you write like Tom Clancy type of books as well?
No.
No, not at
It's
all.
not enough writing these.
Yeah.
You try analysing data, putting it in chronological order, then putting it in state by state or county by county order. Most people think, how the hell do you do it? I often wonder how I do it. Considering I only work an hour a night and maybe 8 or 12 hours on a weekend. But I still, last year I published 8 books.
Wow, man.
I still have a 12-hour job during the day.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I still can't afford to retire.
No one can afford to retire.
No. I'd like to. I can imagine the books I'd whip out then.
Right.
Yeah. Well, you might not have a choice here pretty quick. There's a massive lockdowns coming because of this COVID across the planet. So, you might find yourself with a bit of extra time to...
I'm on 3 weeks long service at the moment, but I've had 3 different procedures in the last 3 weeks. So
yeah.
But, technology is here to keep us going. I've got too much to do. I've got a wife to support. She's retired. And I've got a lifestyle to support. And I don't like being a starving author in a garret.
Yeah.
Right.
I've been there, done that. No, thank you. I didn't like it the first time.
Yeah. Blame you.
We've got to do it at least once. Become the starving researcher or author living in poverty. And then you decide, no, stuff this. I still want to eat.
Yep.
I still want to have heating. I still want to be comfortable.
Yeah, I hear
And also,
you.
I've got to keep buying books.
So how many
I've
books
got
have you published this year?
I think I've published 3 already this year. I can't remember. 2 or 3, but it's only the beginning of the year. And then I've got a major one I'm starting in a few months, which is going to be a difficult book to write. It'll be my first. Normally I have a bibliography in my books. So you can look for the bibliography and find the books are all from. You have to have a bibliography.
Mm-hmm.
But the next one, it's not only going to have a bibliography, it will have Harvard postings for every single item in it. Because this book is going to hit the fan so fast and so hard. I'm going to have people nitpicking like they're going out of fashion, and they won't be able to, because every single part of it will have a legitimate source.
Wow.
Every single data point. he won't be able to do a thing about it. He's just going to piss off an entrenched oligarchy of people that are so entrenched and enjoying their power so much.
Yep.
That it's going to piss them off beautifully.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Me too.
I'll tell you both a strange story. For many years, I worked on wormholes through space and time. I called it gateways to the gods. I've had numerous people attempt to help me with it. Oh, I've gone mad. They've died. But I've had serious accidents that stopped them,
Wow.
or strokes. Anyone else would say somebody or something is trying to stop that wormhole book from coming out.
Right.
Yeah.
I haven't stopped. I've had a lot of problems, health-wise, etc., and otherwise at times. I'm still here. I'm still researching. I'm still pushing. I'm still pushing the envelope. I'm still a maverick scientist. I don't write fiction. Truth is amazing enough. You don't need fiction.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the joy of being self-diagnosed Asperger's. You can use it. I mean, people said, why did you continue with Gateways to the Gods when you had people literally dying who were helping you or offered to help you? I said, because it has to come out.
Yeah.
Because you know one of the benefits and features of knowing where those wormholes can be predicted? Imagine, we have this area that suddenly appears for a limited time. We go into it. But this time we go into it knowing we are going into it.
That's what I'm talking about.
Imagine
Yeah.
what you could do with total free-form matter. Matter that you yourself know you can create realities out of. Remember I stated the observer was creating the manifestation,
Yeah.
fueled by the free-form matter. Imagine using that for healing. How powerful that would be.
Yeah.
You are changing people's structure to remove cancers and diseases.
Mhm.
This is the real reason they built these things, for the power in it. So I'm pretty sure that whoever uses this for total negativity will wipe themselves out. The power and the energy is so strong in these things because it can create a reality that leaves traces. That's just one facet. Another facet is mapping it. A lot of earthquakes happen on the sine waves as well, which is the energy coming out of the earth.
Mhm.
You see it lighting up the sky. Imagine being able to find out, good, January 4th and 5th, 2014, get out of Tokyo.
Right.
Or get out of San Francisco or Los Angeles.
Mhm.
How many people can you save that way? There are so many variables, so many things that can be done. That can be, this power can be used. That's why I've kept up with it. Yeah, to me, it's my most important book. It's my most important work. As I said, I started it in 73 or 74. There's a hell of a lot of re-editing and reworking. And the original volumes had latitudes and longitudes in them as well, plus catalogues of data, all gone from the new book. I had to get rid of all of it because people couldn't understand it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a big, heavy book, literally and figuratively, but it's worth it. You know, if somebody can work out the mathematics of it, that would be great. But I won't do it the normal way.
Right.
You're talking about different curves, but they're still curves.
Mhm.
I think my way of plotting where they've occurred, seeing the sine waves done regularly, visually you can work out where they're going to happen. Using my system of plotting it.
Yeah. I wonder if anyone's looked into it yet and figured it out, and they're just not letting it out because there's so much money behind natural disasters.
Yeah, there is. Insurance industries would love it.
Yeah.
But I had insurance industries in the 90s discussing it with me just for earthquakes. But they couldn't work out the mathematics. But they were that interested in it, they actually discussed it with me for a while.
Yeah.
And all of this is based on UFO and Bigfoot. Remember, that's what it's all based on. Sightings of non-existent things,
Mhm.
apparently.
Well, they
Weird
exist.
stuff.
They exist, that's for sure.
Why do you think I want to write fiction? Like my friends and my wife said, why didn't you write fiction and just, you got stuff for 1 billion fiction books.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could, but I won't. I've got too much research to do. I've got, maybe I'm like Don Quixote de la Mancha. I'm tilting at windmills, but I'm having a bloody good go at them.
Mm-hmm.
I hope you've had a few things to think about today.
Oh, absolutely.
Omar, you're thinking.
Yeah, just,
A good interview is like good sex. You feel really stuffed afterwards, but it's been great.
yeah, my brain's just floating here. I've got a lot of information to digest. So we've been at it for 1 hour and 45 minutes now. So I figure, I'll give my brain a bit of a chance to catch up here, and more than likely,
to take in.
Yeah, more than likely, I'm going to go back and rewatch the show, like I normally do. And
will you be able to post a link on my Facebook page for me? I don't even know how to put it on my YouTube page. It's been so long.
Absolutely, and I will send you a copy of this as well. So that way you have a copy, and I have
Because
a copy.
The last one we did had hundreds of responses. It was great. And that was on the Great Cataclysm. If Clarence wants to look at earlier work, specializing particularly, he can just look at the different interviews I've already done on Bigfoot and I've already done on the Great Cataclysm.
Yeah, definitely will.
And they were still 2-hour interviews, so grab yourself a sandwich and a smoke and a bottle of scotch. And now you look more like a bourbon man.
Very interesting talks. For sure. I gotta say that. I always enjoy it, George. Thank you very much for your.
I've missed talking to you. I've enjoyed it immensely.
Yeah.
I'm sorry it gets a bit disjointed at times.
Yeah, this is we're not professional broadcasters or streamers. We're just a bunch of guys that hanging out and smoking cigarettes and drinking a little bit, and
we're chewing the fat. We're having a think. I love the concept you brought up of the inefficient technology. You're right. It was inefficient.
Yeah.
Where the hell is it coming from? It must be local.
I think it's part of our older civilization that lived on Mars, and they're the ones that possibly we went to war with, or we went to war with together, and against something else, and they're the ones that were traveling here, and we're using our Vimanas to go there, and we exchange ambassadors. I've proposed that that the elongated skulled people that we find here on Earth are actually part of the Martian civilization that just got left behind. Right, they're here on on work, essentially, as ambassadors or whatever the case may have been back in those days, but ended up getting trapped here because due to the war, or because Mars was destroyed, and they just ended up being left here, and they died, and they were revered later on, and possibly because they were more advanced than the current civilization at that time, or maybe they saw them as prophets or messengers or whatever the case may be, and that's why they've taken such good care of their burial, because they knew back in those days that there's very few of these guys around, and thus they took care of them. But for me, in the Bible, I read it, and right from the get-go, it just didn't make any sense to me, because I'm seeing UFOs, I'm hearing about UFOs, and I'm hearing about this advanced technology. I'm watching Star Trek, and and we're seeing like Ezekiel's wheel, for instance, or rockets landing and taking off. And for me, Cape Canaveral came to mind, and I was like, no, we're not dealing with a advanced civilization here. We're dealing with something relatively low tech, when you really think about it on a much greater scale, like UFOs coming out of the sun, using the sun as a stargate, and their UFOs are as big as the Earth, if not a bit bigger, and they're sending in smaller ships to come and check the Earth out, and and this rocket fuel business just doesn't make any sense. I talked with Leo about this 3-4 years ago. I think about that, about 3-4 years ago, maybe a little bit before then, and I said the same thing then, and I just think the technology is confused, and people want to believe that they're aliens, and they don't want to let go of the Darwinian part of their thinking, and and they don't want to give credit to humans where credit is deserved, and they just want to credit aliens all the time. Aliens built the pyramids, aliens built Stonehenge, and I always ask, well, why not humans? How come humans couldn't have built this? We have, I'm sure you're familiar with the work of Klaus Donna. He's discovered artifacts that date like 350 million years, 500 million years, that are engineered and designed, and and they're tools that are encased in coal. Sometimes they're gold jewelry, or artifacts, or Tupperware, or plates, cups, chalices, whatever the case may be. But this is dating back like 500 million years. So that's like a 500 million years we're going back. So I always say to people, don't be too quick to dismiss the humans just because we're in the false perceptional state of mind that we're in right now. It doesn't necessarily mean we were like this in the past. So I've always said that we were traveling back and forth, and in the Bible there's the proof, with the rockets and such that we're reading about, and that has to be intersolar travel. I can't see it anything beyond that. Let's say you want to go to, like you were saying, Alpha Centauri, they'd need to have gas stations along the way.
4.6 light years.
Yeah.
Alpha Centauri.
They need to have gas stations along the way where they're selling fuel or trading
economically
fuel.
unviable.
Yeah, so maybe they have that type of structure set up, and we just don't know about it, or maybe we just found out, and that's why Donald Trump created the Space Force, because there's gas stations out there now, and they can freely actually travel a little further than our solar system.
We've always travelled.
Oh yeah,
We've just been stuck here for a while.
Right.
Yeah, we've been pretty slow lately.
I want to mention something else. Once again, I was mentioning 1600 BC, when the Bronze Age, oddly enough, ended in Europe at the same time. There's all these disasters and the time of Exodus and Santorini. It's interesting that at 1500 BC, at the end of the Bronze Age in Europe, copper mining stopped in North America.
Right.
Around the Great Lakes region.
Yeah.
We're speaking of economics. A market for the Great Lakes copper, the purest copper in the world, of which hundreds of thousands of tons was excavated.
They call it Solomon's
It was
Mines.
Europe. What's that?
They call it the Solomon's Mines.
Oh, they call it lots of things, but Santai Peninsula, Grand Isle, Michigan, the peninsula of Michigan, the north of it, it's all copper.
Yeah.
There's right in Lake Michigan too, isn't there? Clarence?
Well, yeah, they found places up there in Michigan. It's been well documented where there's been massive mining done long before any so-called humans that we know, moved here, or even lived here. And they were trying to figure out where did all this copper go to and who dug it up, because, nobody was here at that time. So, yeah, pretty crazy stuff.
Yeah, well, the copper trade was between the Minoans and Phoenicians, who went to the mouth of the Mississippi, because a little thing most people don't know, even in that period, it was another pluvial period.
Sure.
But do you know, if you sail up the Mississippi and you sail up the Illinois River, and then the Des Moines River, you hit Lake Michigan.
Yes. Yep.
You've virtually got half a mile. You can easily transfer a boat into Lake Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And then you sail back down to the Gulf of Mexico and you're out.
And you're gone. Yeah.
Oh, the big mound builder trading centers all along the Missouri and the Mississippi. That's what I love writing about North America. Got so much stuff and it's all in English.
Right.
I don't have to translate it. Australia didn't want to know about any of my work, so I don't even let them interview me anymore. One tried, no one did, and he said, "How can you prove you're the biggest? You've written more books than any other author on Amazon." And I thought, what a stupid question when you interview people who've written one fantasy.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, to hell with you.
Well,
There's so much.
my other thought on that too, and I've mentioned this many times, is that even here in Minnesota, we were part sea at one time.
Yes.
We find shark's teeth and all kind of aquatic, vertebrae and whatever. And when it comes to things like that mining deal up there in Michigan and stuff, I often wonder if the seas weren't there. You know what I'm saying? They were traveling back and forth right across here in boats. You didn't have to worry about the Mississippi back then. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but the lakes of Minnesota sort of stopped at the bottom of Minnesota. You still needed a major flow. But the reason for a lot of Viking artifacts, Viking artifacts in Minnesota is because of the lakes. They could sail anywhere they want to once they got to Lake Michigan.
Right.
And headed south. Because, once again, medieval period, 8th, 9th to 14th century, was a warm period, which means it's a pluvial period or rainy period.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't call Greenland Greenland because it was painted green.
Right.
They didn't call Iceland Iceland because it was icy.
Right.
In that case, they did. Greenland. At 11th to 12th century, the Cathedral of Garda, which was the capital of Greenland. This is an indication of my next book. It had cattle buyers for 300 cattle.
Wow.
Dairy cattle, which were the main animal Vikings reared in Norway.
Sure. Yeah.
Sweden. 300 of them. You've got to feed them. You've got to have a summer that's warm enough to feed them.
Yeah.
And to produce enough feed for them to last over the winter in the cattle buyers.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't the only cattle buyer in Greenland. There were lots of them, but it was the biggest because it belonged to the Cathedral Church of Garda, which finally closed down around about late 13th century when the warming period was ending. Cold periods are the common periods on Earth. Warm periods are the rare periods. And I'll give you another one as well. 2nd century to the 3rd century BC, grapes could not be grown north of Vienna in Europe. You see isobars? It was the beginning of a warming period. Around the apparent time of Christ, 1st century AD, grapes could be grown in Stockholm in Sweden.
Wow.
Oh.
3rd century AD,
Huh.
grapes could only be grown as far as Regensburg in southern Germany. I don't follow statistics because you can warp statistics like they're going out of fashion.
Right.
I look at fossils. I look at ruins. Grapevines don't lie. Insects don't lie. Cows don't lie.
Yeah.
You don't have 300 cattle in Greenland for them to have nothing to eat.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think
Economics again?
That warming period now, and
Yeah.
that's why this global warming is.
It is the global warming.
Mm-hmm.
That's when one of the next books I'm working on. That's going to have to be so well documented because there's so much money involved in this global warming fiasco or conspiracy. This is normal weather. I'm glad we're tidying the planet up. It's great. It's a good excuse for doing that. But we're not going to go back to the medieval dark period again. I'm not living in a cave relying on my own hunting skills. I don't have any and I don't like caves. Anyway, I did a lot of caving when I was younger, but that was different. I wasn't planning to live in one. There are a lot of people making a lot of money out of renewables.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
They don't want their market to end.
Yeah.
Governments. They just
Yeah,
passed this
governments,
carbon
private
tax.
individuals.
Carbon tax is going to cool
Yeah.
the world down, George. The more money
No.
we get, the cooler it's going to get.
It's going to cool a lot of economies. That's
All
if
right,
the coronavirus doesn't kill them first. But we have a warm period. We're lucky to have it at the moment. Early last century, early 19th century, actually before last century. I'm that old, I keep forgetting which century I'm in. By the 1850s, the Thames was still freezing over in London. And it's a wide river, but it was freezing over.
Yeah.
Hasn't frozen over since then. Hasn't had the snowfall since then. But I plan to be a few hundred years old. I'll be packing woolies again.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd get my anorak and my nana to make some nice woolies for me to get ready for the next cold period.
The Rideau Canal in Ottawa, that used to stay frozen, and now it doesn't freeze anymore.
No, it's just standard climatic shift.
Yeah,
Look at
they won't
people.
skate on it anymore. Because they're afraid they're going to fall through. It freezes, at a certain point of the winter, but the freeze period is much later than say it was in the 80s, and the defrosting, thawing out is much earlier than in the 80s.
Think of England. Oh, they used to say that. Fly back and think of England. This is a different subject. England now has a wine industry.
Right.
It didn't have one 30 years ago. A grapevine couldn't grow there if it tried,
Right.
let alone harvest grapes.
Yeah.
It's for weather changing. And it doesn't matter. This is where human egotism comes into it, propagated by these climate fear profiteers. We are not that powerful. We can affect the weather, no matter what we do. The average volcano will cause more weather disruption than we'll ever imagine.
Sure.
It will produce nuclear winters that we can barely recall. Mind you, the last one was 1813, if I remember, but I can't remember the name of the Icelandic volcano that did it. They're always too long. You look at Icelandic volcano names, are about this long.
Last nuclear winter I remember was in Edmonton, 1988.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's so much to talk about. I'm really happy I could talk to both of you.
Thank you.
Very much, George. Really appreciate your time.
No, you're worth it. You're the only person who interviews me, remember? There's one other. But for the sake of this, we're not going to mention his name.
Too funny.
Thank you for your time, George. It's been a great conversation, like always, and thank you for Clarence for co-hosting and joining us this evening and this afternoon for you, and night for Clarence, and for all those that watched, and for everyone that's going to watch in the future. I hope to have another conversation with you soon enough. I'd love to talk to you about your new book coming out. That's
the first time I've mentioned it, so
I'd love to,
give me time. I got to finish the next one.
Yeah, for sure. So thank you very much, and that's enough that I got to say. So any last words from you, Clarence, and then we'll cap it off with George.
Yeah, other than the fact he's got my brain going here. I mean, I'm definitely dig into a lot of his research and see what he's got going on there. But we'll definitely have to get together, George, so we can actually talk ourselves too, and bounce some stuff off each other. But I think that's really awesome, and definitely glad I listened to you tonight. Yeah, awesome.
No, thank you, Clarence.
You're welcome.
Keep on questioning, lads. You've got to keep questioning. You've got to keep trying. As I say to people, they've been worried about my health lately, and I say, it's not how many times you fall over, it's how fast you get up, because the second you don't get up, you're fucked.
That's right.
I apologize for the language in advance.
That's right.
Actually, that wasn't advance, was it? I apologize for the language to those who might be intimated by it. I don't really worry about offending people now. Most people are too precious.
YouTube wanted me to tell them whether it was made for kids or not. So I said it's not made for kids. So I think the colorful language it's just fine.
Yep.
That's my.
I tend to swear a bit. It's an Australian thing.
I speak only one English. That's bad English. Usually try to watch my mouth, but I don't got a mirror, so I don't watch it really all that often. So whatever falls out of it kind of just falls out of it.
Yeah.
So any last thoughts, George, before we stream for our viewers?
I give lots of big cuddles to Gilbert. And Couscous actually climbed up onto the desk while we were talking, but didn't stick its head in front of a laptop for a change. So that was good. Yeah, there's Gilly.
There's old Gilbert right there.
What I like with us talking is we are old friends. We talk in a very open, friendly, relaxed manner.
Yeah.
And I like that. Yeah, it lets me get out more, though it does brain melt people.
Sure.
And I get lost in it sometimes, but I think it's because I hold so much.
Well, for me, it would be, a little boring when you, stick to just one subject, right? Say we're talking about Bigfoots, and then you talk about Bigfoots for like an hour and a half, and after an hour and a half, even though it was an intriguing conversation, you lose a little bit of interest throughout it. Or if you're talking about aliens, a little bit ways into it, you kind of lose interest. But when you, jive everything together and start connecting.
Sorry, I went to sleep.
Yeah.
So when you connect dots, that's when that's when the real information comes out. And for me, that's what I really like. Talk about a multiple range of things and just shoot ideas off one another and learn from one each other, and that's what really I like.
Yeah.
So if you guys are looking for the books from the great George Mitrovic, 33 books he's got out, go to Amazon. And as well, in the description of this video, I will have a web link to Amazon for George's books. Don't be shy. They'll make great gifts, coffee table books, office
They're
books.
the size of coffee tables, yes.
Yeah.
But they're easy to read. As I said, I don't write for intellectuals. I write for normal people. And the reviews on Amazon I've had say, I could actually understand this and read it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It wasn't expecting me to have a degree in geology and archaeology. Why? Why am I going to be part of some bloody cabal that, what do they call it? A hegemonic oligarchy in their own language,
Right.
which basically means a group of wankers on their own who don't want to release anything.
I like that word, wankers.
It's an Australian word, but it works out well. Yeah, they spend too much time on focusing on one small part of a subject instead of opening up to the Victorian idea of get to know everything. Okay,
Right.
that's me.
Yeah, that's us. Yeah.
I ring the wife now and tell her to come home. Thank you.
So I will play this short video that I wanted to play earlier. I hope you guys can see that.
Yeah.
Yep. There's the old fella.
Some volume here and bring it back down here. All right.
Cool.
Excellent.
So I wanted to play that video for our intro. I worked on it and added music and stuff to it, and then I couldn't play it in the beginning of the video, so I thought I'd play it at the end. as a closer, so people can see George's books. Those are just a few that I picked out that I found would be interesting to myself, and that I'd love to read. So I picked those out, and I thought I'd show you guys. And the link to those books and the rest of George's books will be in the description of this video. Buy it as a gift, and buy it as a reading material for yourself. Even if it's like one book has like 804 pages in it. So keep your for the next few years anyhow, even if you read a couple of pages a day.
Well, if you're off for 14 days with coronavirus, you can get plenty to read.
You go.
They're all available as ebooks.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. There you go. So again, thank you very much, everyone, for watching, and for those that will watch, and thank you to George and Clarence. With that being said, just wash your hands and take proactive measures to keep yourself safe and your family safe.
And look after your neighbors and don't hoard everything.
Yeah,
exactly.
Old people need stuff as well.
Yeah, especially the elderly, right? So if you have elderly neighbors, go and check on them, make sure they're okay. If they need something from the store, go and get it for them. And while you're at the store, put on some gloves when you push those trolleys around, and carry those baskets around, because we unknowingly touch our faces, scratch our faces while we're out and about, and especially during a time like this. This bug can survive on surfaces for like 3-4 hours. So if you have an infected person that's running around, pushing that cart around, spitting on it, doing whatever, spraying on it, and you come along and you grab that cart and you rub your eyes or your nose, or bring contact close to your mouth, then possibly you might be putting your health and your family's health and your co-workers and co-students and everyone around you at grave risk. And it's just a small proactive measure. I'm sure everybody has gloves. If not, you can always wear winter gloves or rubber gloves, or whatever it is. But make sure that you guys think about that. Don't hoard, and don't get greedy and start profiteering off other people's misery. And really, with that being said, I'm pretty much done with this. So much love, everyone, and we'll catch you guys on the flip side. Actually, tomorrow I have Marlon Cox coming on. We're going to be talking about light working and out-of-body experiences and near-death experiences, and so that should be quite the interesting conversation. I've had Marlon on a couple of times, and so I thought I'd reach out to him today or yesterday and see if he wanted to do a talk. And he's like, yeah, I want to do a talk. So I was like, all right, cool. So he's going to be on tomorrow afternoon about 2 o'clock, 5 o'clock Eastern. So that will be, I'm thinking, probably like Tuesday in Australia. Would it be Tuesday or Monday? No, tomorrow's Monday for you, so it would be Tuesday. Yeah. So, all right, guys, much love, and thank you very much. And this is Omar from Watchers Talk, coming at you from British Columbia, Canada. And question everything. Bye.
Bye-bye.